Welcome everyone. Sam Leary here today. I am talking about the 5 most important UX writing principles. This video is going to be segmented into 3 parts. There's going to be an introduction to UX writing, a brief overview. Then we're going to talk about key principles for effective UX writing. And then we're going to talk about why UX writing matters more now than ever before. So for those that don't know, my name again is Sam Leary. I make videos for folks who are interested in leveraging writing to increase their professional, personal, and entrepreneurial opportunities. So again, in case you don't know, my background is in the humanities. When I was in undergrad, I was a creative writing major, which might not have been the greatest professional decision when it came time for me to transition to the professional world from the academic world, let's say. I felt very unprepared. I went to many a job fair and embarrassed myself basically in front of job recruiters, not really knowing what I was doing, what I was talking about. And now I'm here. I've been very fortunate in my educational opportunities. Not too long after my streak of bombing in front of job recruiters, I was actually accepted into a graduate program where I could do my MFA and teach undergraduate reading, writing, and digital media courses at Johns Hopkins University. So it was incredible. It was a great experience. I'm now on the other side of that. I'm a small business owner, a UX writer, and I want to teach you how you can leverage what is right now the most in-demand writing skill to, again, increase your professional opportunities, your entrepreneurial opportunities, if that's something you're interested in. And I think there is a personal benefit to learning about writing for user experience. So if you have questions, I invite you to follow me along for the ride, ask them in the comments, and I'm here. I'll be there to answer your questions. So let's talk about today's lesson plan. So I want to start with a quote that I selected to frame today's video topic. So the quote is as follows: "The difference between the almost right word and the right word is really a large matter. It's the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning." So Mark Twain said this, 19th century writer. I wrote Old Writer Man for those that don't know and are just looking for a very high level description. I can leave it at that. If you want me to talk about Mark Twain, I could do it, but I don't think that maybe people are interested in that. We're going to set that aside for now. So let's run through it. The lesson plan for today, we'll talk about why learning UX writing matters in tandem with like a quick overview. And then we're going to move on to important UX writing principles. We're going to talk about a bonus slide that I have prepared. And then we're going to do a deep dive of the principles that I mentioned previously. And then the last slide, it's going to be dedicated to the top 4 reasons why learning UX writing matters, which is something I'm going to talk in greater detail about in the next video. But before we get started, if you find any of this helpful, I ask that you please like, comment, and subscribe. I invite you to visit samleary.com and download my free UX writing ebook. I've designed this ebook to help you learn and apply your knowledge faster. So I want you to learn UX writing as quickly as possible. The videos that I'm releasing on my YouTube channel right now are a part of a free UX writing course, and the primary touchstone of this course is the PDF, the document that I put together, the free UX writing ebook. So I invite you to download it, read it, follow along as you're able, and answer any questions that you might have. I am here for you. So without further ado, let's get into it now. So a quick overview of UX writing. So I want to talk about a brief definition. I want to talk about the evolution of UX writing, how it came to be the field that it is. And then collaborative work. So how UX writers work alongside teams or other team members, let's say. First and foremost, though, I want to highlight the image that I've selected here, which I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it's from the article was published by AppQ's UX Secret Sauce. I believe that this is from MailChimp, if I'm remembering correctly. It says automation here, but I'll read it. It is as follows: "High fives. Your campaign is in the send queue and will go out shortly." So why do I like this? Why did I select this? Because I think it, in a way that is quickly digestible, you can understand why UX writing is valuable, why it's becoming increasingly valuable. This is a cute little joke that MailChimp pulled off to communicate to users that your campaign is in the send queue and is going to be sent out shortly. So that's not necessarily the most exciting thing in the world, but the idea is MailChimp made their user interface more user-friendly by putting a lighthearted twist on a communicative messaging. You did something in the MailChimp workflow that isn't exciting. You scheduled a campaign. Your campaign's going to go out soon. But by leveraging UX writing, it's made slightly more enjoyable, a little bit more fun, and maybe that is going to keep somebody sticking around a little longer. And in this increasingly noisy digital world, that is the currency. Attention is currency. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, comment section. But let's talk about it. Quick definition. So UX writing, it's writing to enhance user experience. That's probably not shifting any paradigms, but it's also to achieve business goals. And I've talked about this in previous videos if you've watched them, but UX writers are situated between users and the businesses who own the experience. And to that end, it is UX writers' job to bridge the gap between humans and machines. So enhancing user experience using words to achieve business goals. That's kind of the essence of UX writing. To be more specific though, it's about user centricity and focusing on the user. So what does user centricity mean? I could make 1,000 videos about this, talking about it in great detail, but it's really an effort to always position the user, your potential user, your ideal user personas at the center of the design process. So understanding who your experience is for, who you're writing for, and building around that idea. And in my mind, I included this last bullet point here. There is this kind of poetic quality to UX writing that I'm really interested in and what keeps me going. So I talked about it earlier in this video. If you've been here before, you know that I'm a fiction writer first and foremost. I love poetry as well. And when I was at Johns Hopkins, that's when I really did sort of a deep dive into the world of poetry and gained a deeper understanding. And it still informs my approach to UX writing today. So poetry in my mind is beautiful because it's like equal parts writing and design. Poetry is not just about putting confusing words on a piece of paper and sending them out and, making rhymes happen when it's possible. Poetry is about sound. It's about, comprehension. It's about how we process words, but it's also about design. One thing I always overlooked as a fiction writer is the impact that a paragraph that, just words in general have as they're organized on a page, the way that impacts a user or a reader, I should say, before they've even read anything on the page, just how the presentation of text kind of emotionally affects a person's ability to read. I hope that makes sense. We're getting into the art side of things, and inevitably I will muddy the waters because it's just where my interests lie, and I think it's kind of a bottomless it just has no bottom, this kind of creative, explorative, maybe that's a word, place. So yeah, there's user centricity and poetry, that it's all kind of tied up in UX writing, and it's what makes it so difficult. But before we talk in greater detail, I want to back up. I want to talk about the evolution of writing, how it came to be. So really in the early 2010s is when it became popular, is when the A players in the space, I'm talking the Amazons, the Apples, Microsoft, Google, etc., these large corporations with the money to finance huge teams. In the early 2010s is when they realized, user experience, obviously we've known for a while that's very important, but there are different ways in segmenting user experience. There are designers, there are researchers, there are writers, there's more, but we'll keep it at those three. So the early days, UX writing was overlooked as a discipline, and copy was kind of an afterthought in the design process. It was brought in at the end, but eventually, as I think it has to do in large part with how competitive the digital world became very quickly. You see this recognition and standardization of writing practices, of, writing as something that goes hand in hand with design, which, I put wow in parentheses because, like, who would have thought that, language is important? I'll leave it at that. So anyways, now where we're at is an expansion. That's kind of what I think is happening now. So people are demanding engaging and intuitive experiences. If somebody has to wait like 4 seconds for your website to load, the drop-off rate is like 80%. Like 80% of people just pack up and leave and don't even stick around. So in this world of increasing online competition, increasing digital competition, capturing your users' attention is incredibly important. It's only becoming more important as competition increases. And that is creating a need for UX writers, for people who can come in, whether it's a business, a person, a nonprofit, and basically say, okay, what is your voice? Who are your users? And how do we design an experience, use words that address their pain points and, communicate important details in a way that is messaged consistently. So that is kind of the evolution of UX writing from the 2010s to now. Importantly, what I want to emphasize is that the field is young, and I don't anticipate anything digital going away anytime soon. So I do expect that this is going to become increasingly popular as time goes on. That being said, I believe that if you learn UX writing now and you leverage the skills, you're going to be much better positioned when, you're going to be better positioned as the field demand for UX writers increases. So hopefully you understand how I am connecting this video with the idea that learning UX writing can increase your personal, professional, entrepreneurial opportunities. So last but not least, I want to talk about the collaborative work that UX writers do. It's very important. So UX writers oftentimes, my business, I am the sole UX writer. So a lot of the way I work is I'll be contracted with a business, a nonprofit, a person. And sometimes I'm just working with a stakeholder. I'm just working, if it's a solopreneur, I am working one-on-one with them to design their voice, to implement their voice, to bring the micro copy and the copy on their site up to speed. Alternatively, if it is a bigger, it's a small business, it's a medium-sized nonprofit, something like that, there will be designers, developers, project managers, regular managers, a board of directors. There will be all these different people that UX writers have to move between. So in order to do that, and I'll talk about this in future videos, there's important documentation that UX writers use and are well-versed in developing. So that's the questionnaire, the UX writing questionnaire and the UX writing voice chart, which again, I'll talk more about in future videos. But at a glance, that's kind of what I want to say in terms of collaborative work. Again, what I mentioned previously was that UX writers are positioned between businesses and users as the kind of mediating force between people and machines. And there are many people who do that. Many different roles do that. Designers do that. Developers do that. To some extent, PMs do that, but project managers, But I think it's unique for UX writers because it is so much about the language that's used and clear communication via that language. So that covers a quick overview. Let's move now into the key principles. So there are 5 that I'm going to talk about in today's video. There's clarity, consistency, context, empathy, and then action-oriented. So I'll move through these pretty quickly, but before I do that, I want to talk about this graphic, which is tips for UX writing from UX Magazine. I like UX Magazine a lot. I think it's really helpful. Obviously, I'm a UX writer, but my experience, it's very helpful to have an understanding of UX design as well, and just design tools, design theory. UX Magazine is great for that. So if you're learning, trying to get into the space, that's one place that I recommend. Additionally, let's dig into this a little more. So positive tone, avoid using negative connotations. So what does that mean? How is that, how are these two graphics serving as examples, good or bad examples of clarity, consistency, context, empathy, and action orientation? So let's look at both of these. On the left, the bad one, the one labeled with an X, the example, we see error, system error, code number 1020, authentication. Yeah, I read that right. Issues. Click here. Alternatively, we see, oops, unable to sign in, incorrect name or password. Try again. So probably you can, if I pause the video here and gave you time to like write out the answer, for example, you'd probably be able to say why the example on the right is better than the example on the left and go through all these. But, clarity. Let's talk about clarity. Where are my eyes drawn? Is it clear or unclear what's happening? Can I immediately understand? How readable are these? So I would say, given the interface, these the proportions here looks like just an Apple Watch or something. So that's kind of what I'm going with. They're both pretty scannable. The readability, I would say, is good for the most part, although the first example is obviously poorer for reasons that I'll talk about shortly. But generally speaking, where's the eye drawn? It's drawn to the heading text. In the first example, it's error. In the second, it's oops. And then the eye moves downward, and it moves to, in the first example, system error, code da-da-da. In the second example, unable to sign in, and then we get a clean break, that colon right there. So if it's not clear already, hopefully it's becoming clearer that really the second example is it's the better example because it's clear. Immediately I know, oops, something went wrong, which communicates exactly what error does in a way that is maybe a little more lighthearted, which the importance of lightheartedness in error messages is something I talked about in my previous video. But then we get unable to sign, whereas the first line of this example is system error. Like, they're communicating effectively the same thing, but one is much more user-friendly than the other. And that's really what is important. So consistency, intuition, how does it feel? Consistency is really something that goes beyond any single screenshot. So, what that basically means is what are linguistic examples that are similar to oops, that are lighthearted in a way that is similar to oops. That is consistency. That would be spread across a number of different pages. It's a way of communicating to your user in a manner that is recognizable. If you're in an experience, I keep wanting to use the word consistent, and that for obvious reasons is not great for describing consistency. Consistency, though, is also about color, font, typography, design, images. So what that means is, and I can circle back to this when we look at more examples, but what colors are being used, what fonts, what are the heading fonts, what are the body paragraph fonts, the button fonts and typography. And then from a design standpoint, how is content cascading images wise? What is the, what's the aspect ratio? What pixel sizing are we looking at? So there are a number of different ways that consistency is something UX writers focus on. And my job here is really to just get you thinking more about the different ways in which things are organized on the screens that you engage with regularly. So one thing I encourage you to do is just as you're going through your daily life, you're scrolling through your apps, just pay attention to where text is, why it's there, when it's convenient, because so often I think we just look past the words that we see when we're in the digital world, so to speak, when the reality is it's a learning opportunity if you're at all interested in UX writing every time you pick up your phone or log onto your computer. Next up is context. Can you intuit your location in this experience? Do you know where you are? We're not on a 404 page, let's say. Obviously, I mean, we don't see that 404 error like we saw in the last video, but we can intuit that something went wrong. That obviously, the second line of the better example of the two, we learn unable to sign in, incorrect username or password. So we're immediately able to understand where we are. If you see oops, you know something went wrong. And if you read further, you know that there was a problem with signing in. And that's important because you know where you are in the experience. It's difficult to explain briefly, but one of the jobs of UX writers is to make sure that regardless of what point in the experience a user is in, what web page they might be on if they're on a website, that the user is always able to understand where they are and contextualize where they are with where they would like to go. So if you have, that's kind of, context is more complicated, so I invite you to ask questions if you have them. Is your destination nearby? Right here. If I'm trying to sign into my account, I know that my destination is nearby if I'm looking at the second example here. Unable to sign in, incorrect username or password. I'm close to signing in. I know it's just around the corner, so I'm going to click this try again button and I'm going to stay in the experience and, give it another shot. So beyond context, there's empathy. Empathy is, I spoke about this in my last video, I'll speak about it in my next video. Empathy is so important for UX writing. You need to understand your users to write words for them. Where's the friction in the experience? What are the problems that they're facing, and how is the micro copy, how's the copy, how are the design decisions that are being made, helping to reduce the friction and address the pain points of the user. If we look at this first example, where's the friction? The friction is in calling the error message an error. That is, I'm not saying somebody is going to get mad because they see an error. I think anytime something goes wrong, it is irksome. It bothers me. It bothers people. And I think generally speaking, just choosing a word other than error is helpful. It does a little bit of legwork to maybe reduce your users' feelings of frustration. Whether or not that is always the case, we can get into a theoretical place, so I'll kind of steer clear of that. But the idea is thinking about friction. When we say where is the friction, what that really means is where are the places in the experience that the user tends to slow down, that are slowing down the achievement of the user's goals. How do the visual elements cater to the user? If we look at the second example, I think there's a really nice cascading of content. We see oops, we see unable to sign in, and then we get this longer line of text, and then it's a button. Conversely, things just feel jumbled in the first example. And I know that's more of a feeling and not a clear description, but a lot of times it is just sort of an intuitive understanding of the way the page before you is displayed. Action-oriented is the next key principle. So what task is the experience helping a user complete, and how is user engagement being facilitated? So obviously this, in terms of the task it's helping a user complete, it's the sign-in. Right now something went wrong. We're trying to keep the user in the experience, and we're trying to get them to try again as quickly as possible. So that is how user engagement is being facilitated. If we look at, just comparing the button texts of the first example with the second example, click here versus try again. Click here, you don't really know what you're signing up for, especially after this lengthy, weird, cold, mechanistic error message. Whereas here, you understand, okay, unable to sign in, incorrect username or password, try again. Let's try signing in again. So you know what's coming next. And to the extent that you know what is going to come next, user engagement is being facilitated. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, questions, let me know in the comments. So this is my bonus slide because we were talking about now the universal value of principles. So if we go back quickly, and again, I'm going to do a deeper dive into these principles following the bonus slide, but we have clarity, consistency, context, empathy, and action oriented. So why is this important? Universally, understanding principles are important, whether we're talking about business, we're talking about science, or we're talking about something personal. You know, if you're an artist, if you're interested in, the creative arts, universal principles are important. So I've put 3 books here that are kind of like, they address key principles in different ways, not always directly, but rather they kind of indirectly, they're examples of, valuable principles in their respective fields. So Capitalism in America, that's a book I read. It's fine. There's a lot we could say about Alan Greenspan. I'll save that for another video. Maybe that's a Patreon thing too. The Origin of Species, Charles Darwin, and In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust, which is my favorite novel. So the universal value of key principles. In a business book, you might learn about supply, demand, marketing, financial plans, how to make better decisions, how to develop business plans, managing resources, etc. Science-wise, you might, the foundations, the key principles. It's like, evolution, thermodynamics, the table of elements. Quick overview here for major subjects such as business, science, and arts and culture. Bet you didn't know you needed it, but it's the value of principles. They're what you need to develop theories. It's how you kind of gain your footing in the field that you're in. It all starts with understanding the key principles. So that's really what I'm trying to do in this video about UX writing. It's gonna, key principles. They help you conduct experiments. They help you make discoveries. On the arts wise, it's a lot of times it's like, key principles, time management, communication, setting goals. It's like finding success, in terms of like what you want. If you can identify like key principles, like what works well in Marcel Proust's novel In Search of Lost Time, these are the key principles. Now that I understand those and I am able to use this as this novel as an example of those principles, I can better position myself to find success if I want to write a 4,500 page novel, which, maybe that is something you want to do. And if it is, tell me in the comments, because that's weird. I don't even want to do that. Develop relationships and partnerships, well-being, self-care. I kind of touched on this already, but understanding key principles, you're like ground zero for basically exploring the subject, the subject in greater detail. So UX writing principles are important for UX writing. They can teach you about other fields, but I wanted to do a quick overview of, business, science, and then kind of in the arts to communicate like foundational principles are everywhere. They're in every field, because I think when we understand that, we become more receptive to the principles that we're talking about. So that's just something to think about, if nothing else. What are the different fields that you're on a daily basis you're kind of engaging with, be they business, scientific, or artistic, and what are the key principles there? Just trying to find small ways to accelerate your learning process. So let's talk about these key principles in more detail though. Again, this is for UX writing now. So I discussed in the grand scheme of things why UX principles are important. Let's zero in more detail now. So clarity leads to improved usability. It reduces user confusion, and it increases trust and loyalty. So I know exactly where this is from. Maybe you do as well. Maybe you don't. Place your order. By placing your order, you agree to Amazon's privacy. So this is Amazon. This is something you click when you are ready to send it and to get your, your little goodies delivered to you super fast via Amazon. Although, like, recently, as an aside, Amazon has been taking very long. I waited 11 days for dog food to get to me. So fortunately, I was able to feed the corgis. Returning viewers will note that I have 2 corgis. Anyways, I don't have to keep beefing with Amazon. This is a pretty clear example. It's an example of clear UX writing. Place your order. You know what you're getting. That button says it all. This is what you click to place your order. This is how you get the goodies to come your way. And to that end, now that I've covered what this is doing on a functional level, it improves usability because the user knows what to expect. And to that end, it reduces confusion. And to that end, it increases trust and increases loyalty. Confusion is reduced. I know what I'm getting. I click the button. My goodie comes and, it arrives on my doorstep in, 2 to 3 business days. And now I trust Amazon. Now I'm more loyal to Amazon or whoever delivered my package to me. So in a small way, that is how just clarity is one of the key principles that leads to a better user experience and is going to lead to returning users. And I'll add now that the article, it's by Real Big Words. This is UX writing at its very best. So I like all these examples. I think they're fun, they're clean. A lot of them are examples that people are likely familiar with. So let's continue. Consistency. This is from Netflix, so who's watching? And then you get the little icons. Everything is organized in a way that is very appealing and consistent. But let's talk more about consistency. Consistency reinforces brand identity. So what does that mean? It means if you're on a website, you land on the homepage, you navigate to the services page, and then beyond just the services page, if we understand that as being like an overview, then clicking into a specific service. There's a journey that you just went through. You likely moved through 3 different web pages to arrive at the specific service. So reinforcing brand identity, what are the consistencies across those pages? Linguistically, as well as from a design standpoint. How are colors, fonts, different design decisions, layout, informational architecture, how is all of that reinforced from one page to the next so that a brand identity can be communicated to the user? So in Netflix's case, I can't necessarily what comes after this, but Netflix prefaces when you have to select what account you're interested in using with who's watching. And this is kind of the first example of a pattern that Netflix makes to consistently engage their user in a way that puts the user at the center of the experience. So what comes to mind is, the whole experience of Netflix begins with the question, who's watching? And if I've done this before, you binge watch 30 episodes of The Office or however many you need to, and you get to this place where you've just finished an episode, Netflix says still watching. So I don't know if that necessarily communicated consistency as best I wanted to, but the idea is that to engage the user, Netflix is using similar word choice in both examples, in the beginning of the experience and to make sure that somebody is, hasn't fallen asleep on the couch, that they're still watching. Who's watching is what they ask in the beginning. Are you still watching is what they ask on the other side. So that, I think, is hopefully giving you some idea of how brand identity is reinforced. It's also, consistency increases efficiency. It decreases the amount of unique decisions you have to make from one page to the next. And to that end, if there's greater efficiency, what that usually translates to is easier navigation. And this gets into informational architecture, which I could talk at great lengths about, but the key there is like, obviously anytime you're writing, you could write just about anything. But when we're talking about UX writing and writing for an experience, for a digital product, an application, a website, you name it, we need to stay within certain boundaries so that our user can have an easy time navigating the site, regardless of whether or not they've arrived on a website for the first time or their 100th time. So greater efficiency and easier navigation. Context. So context aids in situational clarity, it supports accessibility, and it improves user satisfaction. So what does all of this mean? The example here is from, I want to say it's like Dollar Shave Club or something. I can't super zoom in on these. Yeah, it is. So get started. We will stock you. I love that. I think that's so good. But wait, there's more. You say when. So this here is communicating effectively like the user flow for, the Dollar Shave Club. It aids situational clarity. It supports accessibility. It's very readable. We're only getting 3 or 4 lines of text at a single time, and it's going to improve user satisfaction. So what are the decisions the UX writers made here? The decisions that they made were to use icons, to do a lot of the heavy lifting of the text, to write copy, micro copy that communicates kind of some sort of lighthearted brand voice. And again, that is communicated in the we will stock you. It's kind of, this jokey play on a song that many English-speaking users are likely to be familiar with. And to that end, it is kind of improving user satisfaction. Or if not improving, then it is working to, put the user at ease, ensure that they enjoy their time in the experience while also communicating valuable information. So hopefully that gives you some idea of the 3 C's: clarity, consistency, and context of UX writing. All right, before we talk about the key principles 4 and 5, empathy and action-oriented, I want to remind you that if you're finding any of this helpful, I hope you'll subscribe, I hope you'll comment, and hit that like button. I'd also invite you to visit samleary.com and get my free UX writing ebook. If you're at all interested in this, that is kind of the touchstone, the textbook of this free course. It's like 14 pages, so it's probably the shortest textbook that you'll ever pick up. Beyond that, though, let's look at this. So I pulled these from an article from Technical Writer HQ, which I really like. There's a lot of content there. My experience is it's more for businesses than users who are interested in learning, but maybe that's not 100% the case. Regardless, there are a lot of helpful articles. This is one example. 40 UX writing examples to inspire you. So let's talk about empathy. So empathy helps you anticipate your users' pain points, helps you craft content that aligns with real needs, and that means, obviously anticipating the pain points so that you can actually create content, put content in front of the user that addresses their pain problems. And importantly, this is not easy. This is why you need documentation, specifically the voice chart, which I talked about in the last video. I'll talk about in future videos. But empathy, I can't emphasize enough how important empathy is. Because without empathy, you don't understand your user, you can't address their problems, you're just spinning wheels, basically. So let's zoom in. So select your cancellation date. Don't charge me on 3/9/2022. We won't charge you again. You can continue using your subscription until 3/9/2022. Cancel immediately and get a refund. We'll refund the payment method we have on file, but you'll lose access to your subscription. So why is this good? Why is this empathetic toward the user? It's empathetic because we see here in the option for a user to select the cancellation date. We see 2 very different options that are communicated clearly. So we won't charge you again. You can continue using your subscription until 3/9, or you can cancel immediately and get a refund. The text is bolded. It's within clearly defined borders. You only get 2 lines of text. Each line is less than like 50 characters or so, so it's very skimmable, very readable, and the language is not complicated. Relatively short words that users are likely to be familiar with, and that is all concerned with empathy. It might not, when we think empathy, at least speaking from personal experience, when I think of what empathy is, I think of something that is very emotional, and to some extent it is that. But in this case, in the case of UX writing, empathy has so much to do with just thinking yourself into the position of somebody else, which I guess is what empathy is. I'm just trying to draw sort of a line between what folks might think of as more emotional and, how it serves maybe a less emotional, more functional purpose with UX writing. So again, this process isn't easy, and it's why documentation exists to, streamline this process, which again, I'll talk about in the future. Last but not least, the key principle, fifth key principle is action-oriented. UX writing is always trying to prompt a sense of urgency and motivation to increase conversion rates and guide users from point A to point B to C to D, so on. So what does that really mean? I mean, let's look at this example. So this pirate ship example. Ahoy, Captain. Email password, yar, log me in. So, it's fun. It's engaging. It's not, it's not something you see every day. It's not something that could be reproduced by, say, a bank or something. I don't know. I'm just the first example that came to mind. This is unique to this website. The voice is unique to this brand. And the expressions of that brand voice are always action oriented when they're done well. In this case, look at where we get the decisions to lean into this sort of pirate theme. We get it in the heading, the Ahoy Captain, and the button text. Now the heading isn't super important, and I think we know it's not super important because it's just Ahoy Captain. It's kind of, it engages the eye, it draws the eye to the web page, and then we see an email form field and a password form field, so we can kind of intuit what comes next. But we have log me in. That's what's in the button, and obviously it's preceded by yar. So my point is there's a voice here, a very clear UX writing voice, but it is all focused on the action of getting a user to sign in. There's never a sacrifice that is made to adhere to the voice at the expense of the action. We just get the standard process of signing in is supplemented with a voice that is engaging, that is fun, that is branded. And that's why UX writing is valuable. It helps to make an experience more enjoyable, more usable, and more memorable. So prompting a sense of urgency and motivation. Yar, log me in. Like, let's go. I'm ready. I will log in. And it's the yar that did it for me. It's that, that pirate leaning. And to that end, I think it likely increases conversion rates. And it's really guiding a user from, the sign-in screen to the user dashboard on the other side of logging in. So hopefully that makes sense. Obviously, questions, let me know in those comments because I'm here. Is my screen? Yeah, that's maybe a little bit more. That's probably better. Okay, just a quick overview. Again, clarity, consistency, context, empathy, action-oriented. If we look at these examples, I love this example, the leader in website creation. This is from a HubSpot article that talks about great landing pages. So the leader in website creation, it's simple, the graphics good, the button's there, start now, I'm ready to start, let's go. Next up, again, just like a very simple to understand, Code Academy. A very simple like sign up page, it's clean, it's minimalistic, and I don't know, I like it. It pops off they use shadow to make the image pop off. a little bit, and I know what I'm doing. My eye is drawn to the image, it's drawn to the heading and the form fields, and the submission button. So I know where I am, what I'm doing, how this point in the experience functions to get me to where I want to go, which is going to be logged in in the member dashboard. Conversely, I can't remember what company New Frontier, that's who it is, which they do like internet, phone, whatever. This is a nightmare of a landing page. I don't know what is going on if we zoom in here. And this is what HubSpot talked about in the article. They cited this as a poor example. Welcome to the New Frontier, let's talk. And then just this block of text. There are 3 calls to action instead of just one. Normally you want to have one clear call to action whenever possible, especially the fact that this is not anymore, was at one point the hero section of the site. So I won't talk about the ways that I would improve this. I would say like a bigger H1 heading. If you stretch this out, it probably goes down to 3 lines at 50 characters across per line, and then a button to like explore bundles or something that is going to get somebody in the funnel for high-speed internet, digital phone, and television. So yeah, it's dated because it says digital phone. But yeah, and so those are just a quick overview of these 2 examples. I think the better of the 3, they're clear, they're consistent, they're contextualizing insofar as the user is able to understand where they are in the experience. They're empathetic toward their user insofar as they communicate effectively where the user is in the experience and give them one clear call to action. Empathetic and action oriented. The first example, start now, trying to get you to click that button so that you begin the experience. The second example, trying to get you to click that sign in button so you sign in and can start to use the experience. Whereas the third example is just lacking in those departments. My eye is drawn to a number of different places. It doesn't really feel consistent in its messaging to that end. The context, I don't know where I am in the experience. Obviously, they want me to check out high-speed internet, digital phone, or television. But, if I'm interested, I won't dive into the minutia, but they could do a better job of contextualizing this page as, the first in, an exploration of bundled packages rather than segmenting them like individually. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, comments. Empathy and action oriented. Yeah, I think it's just lacking in the empathy department. Like, where am I looking here? I can't scan it fast enough. I'm not saying that I have the attention I'm not saying I have the attention of a goldfish, but be mindful. I could be looking at something else. So hopefully that gives you some idea of key UX writing principles in action. Just a quick overview of top 4 reasons why UX writing matters. So again, this is going to be the focus of the next video, but I do want to touch on these topics just quickly in closing for this video. So the reasons why UX writing matters now more so than ever before is because it improves user experience, it enhances brand voice and identity, it drives conversions, and it reduces support costs. So when we talk about why UX writing is in demand, why the field is growing, it's because of all 4 of these. It improves user experience. If you're able to increase user satisfaction and loyalty and reduce bounce rates and increase engagement, that's how you effectively make money online. It's how you drive more conversions. So UX writing works to that end. It also helps to build brand recognition and loyalty. It increases brand credibility and trust. If you remember when we were talking about Clarity, the Amazon example, how clear messaging facilitates recognition, but also loyalty, and how just understanding the process, communicating the process to your user increases the probability that they will return, that they will come back to you and not abandon you forever and leave you in the cold digital abyss. Additionally, driving conversion. So creating persuasive and effective messaging, guiding users through the user journey, and increasing conversions. if you can move somebody through a user journey via clear, consistent messaging, like that's how you generate a return on an investment. How you generate a return on investment. You know, UX writing is not some it's not some magical game of testing. You know, there are real rules that you can implement to facilitate an increase in conversions. And to that end, that's why UX writers are becoming increasingly popular and something that organizations, businesses alike, are seeking out. Reducing supporting costs. This is lesser known, but equally important, if not more so. I saw recently at a local business event, I saw that the average cost to hire a new employee is 1.5 times the annual salary of the position, which is crazy. So what that means is, like, if I'm working a marketing job for $50,000 a year and I leave, the company that I was working for $50,000 a year is now going to have to pay effectively $75,000 to hire a new employee. And that goes into, you know, there are a bunch of different ways to measure that cost. It's not just like, okay, now we have to like pay somebody $75,000 or whatever it is. But the idea is, you know, support costs come in all shapes and forms, and UX writers help to enhance collaboration within design and development teams, and they promote a user-centric mindset throughout the organization. And to that end, support costs are reduced. So to say a little bit more about that, obviously it kind of means, you know, if we write the words well, you know, we're not going to have to pay a lot of money to rewrite them, you know. So to that end, you know, they reduce support costs there, but also in establishing, you know, I talked about the UX writing voice chart as a valuable form of documentation for establishing a brand voice and effectively, you know, creating documentation that can be given to designers, developers, project managers, board members, different stakeholders to say, okay, this is our voice, this is our messaging, this is how the organization speaks on different digital platforms. It's super important. You know, I was talking with who was I speaking with? A business owner recently who was talking about onboarding a content writer and the difficulties that came along with it, and bringing them up to speed on, you know, their brand voice and who they are and what they're all about. And when we talk about that, that's another way that UX writing, especially the documentation side of things, can reduce support costs. If I have a UX writing voice chart that says, these are our product principles, these are the concepts that we're going for, this is the verbosity, the vocabulary, this is how we capitalize things to communicate these points, you know, that's going to make the onboarding process much easier for a new writer. So there are many different ways that UX writers help to reduce costs. And if you understand them, you can leverage them in professional spaces and entrepreneurial spaces to your own end. And that's really how you can how you can leverage UX writing and writing more generally to increase your professional, personal, entrepreneurial opportunities. So hopefully that makes sense. And that's everything I got. So I want to thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you will subscribe to my channel, hit like, comment, subscribe, follow my other socials. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter, and download my free UX writing ebook. Visit samleary.com, join my newsletter. I send an email out once a week, usually on Wednesdays, although I might be changing that. We'll see how it goes. And I just talk about UX writing insights, writing, and general like art insights, as well as Gen Z business tips. So that's my spiel. I want to thank you so much for being here. If you made it to the end, congratulations. You survived another day of class. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.